My company's name is the Angry Ironsmith. I create anything that you can imagine out of scrap steel, old rebar. I've reused cast iron skillets to engrave words on, pretty much anything. Tonight I'll be making a tomahawk out of a ball peen hammer. People give me reclaimed steel all the time. I get some from local vendors in Putnam County and the surrounding counties. There is a huge network of blacksmiths around that are happy to help and hand out steel all the time. Last year I was invited to be here, and this year they just called me back. Apparently I had people coming all the way from Nashville and Knoxville just to see me doing demos and to look at my wares. We're here at the Putnam County Fair at the barnyard just by the south gate entrance. I heat metal up between 1500 and 2000 degrees depending on what I'm doing, and at that point it acts a lot like Play-Doh and clay, and the hammer just happens to move it in whatever direction I need it to. There are many specifically shaped tools that do certain processes, and each hammer has its own strengths and weaknesses. The smaller pieces like the hooks and the steak flippers and the horseshoe fish, I can knock 5 or 6 of those out in about 30 minutes. The bigger projects like the pot rack or the tripod, they take anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. Becoming a blacksmith is something that I've always wanted to do, growing up reading the iconic books and watching the movies of Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and all that. It's always something that I wanted to do. I want to create something from nothing. And in my early 20s, I got tired of waiting for the tools and the knowledge and picked up a hammer and started doing it by myself. I like the idea of taking something that's cold and hard and sharp and showing people that it can be fluid and delicate at the same time. And I love making the flowers the most because you take these things that are, inanimate and static, and you can give them movement with a hammer. It's a tremendous feeling to take a hammer and smack some stuff around, and in the end you end up with something beautiful. I started by digging a hole in the ground and lighting a fire and using a hair dryer for an air source, and then I grabbed a sledgehammer and was using that as an anvil for a couple years. And then I slowly upgraded and bought tools and was handed things by older smiths who saw my hunger and drive. Blacksmithing is very therapeutic for me. I almost zone out when it happens, and then at the end of it I come to and realize that I've made this beautiful thing out of a straight piece of metal. It's physically therapeutic. It stretches and uses a bunch of your muscles, and it keeps you fit, and it helps you take your frustrations from the world out. And at the end of the day, I just feel so much better about myself and the things that I'm doing. I have currently got shop space right off of the O'Connor exit on 111, and I'll start teaching classes again here in Putnam County. I enjoy teaching classes the most. That is my favorite part about this, is taking people and showing them how to do this and seeing that aha moment when they realize this is what they're talking about, and I made this out of something cold and hard. I've taught classes out of Wilson County Fairgrounds in Lebanon for a couple years, and here soon, now that I've got some shop space in Putnam County, I'll start teaching here. I teach beginner lessons unless somebody comes in with a working knowledge already, so the curriculum is based off of what their working knowledge of it is. At this moment, I would teach you how to make a hook. It shows a bunch of the fundamentals. You have to measure, you have to have an idea and a design in your head. You draw out and make a taper for your end. You can twist, and then you have to make the mounting part of it, and you have to flatten it out, and then you have to punch holes. It's deceptively complicated. How easy a hook looks, it can be very complicated. There are probably fewer working blacksmiths than there were 200 years ago, but the craft is in its renaissance. I have met thousands of blacksmiths here in the last couple years, and a lot of them are in Tennessee and the surrounding states. It is very much a southern thing, and I think that that's fantastic. Nearly every fairgrounds has a blacksmith shop, and where I live here in Putnam County, I'm only 15 minutes away from a dozen other blacksmiths. The coffee table that I made was a customized piece. I was contacted by a person who was using an ottoman as their coffee table, and they were always spilling their drinks and everything else because it's a cushion. So I made this tremendously awesome table, and it had 2 copper flowers underneath the glass top that I patinaed with salt and vinegar to give it that green, old look. Custom pieces. I also make knives. Knives are expensive to do and they require a lot of work, so I don't keep them on the table because can't afford to have a bunch of money sitting out on the table and no one buying it. The tools that you need to be a blacksmith, you can use nearly anything to get started. Like I said, I started with a sledgehammer head as an anvil and a ball peen hammer, and then I was using vice grips instead of tongs. You know, you work with what you got, and that's kind of our motto, and I think that that's a beautiful thing, that we can make something from nothing. I currently use both types of fuel. I use a propane because it's more portable and it's cleaner and it doesn't smell bad, and at home when I'm making anything with a third dimension, I use coal. And you know, you end up with 2 very different products. The metal, as it gets hotter, absorbs the carbon out of the coal, therefore becoming harder in the end. The propane I use normally when I'm making blades because it's a straight channel. Anytime you gain volume or that third dimension, it simply won't fit. This propane forge is a 3-burner Majestic knife maker's forge, and I can get it up to 22 or 2300 degrees depending on what I need it to do. And the metal, I can get the metal to start bending at a red heat that's about 1000 degrees, 1300. I can weld steel together once it gets up to 22 and it's almost a liquid state. Then I fold it over to where the 2 ends touch, make sure the connection is clean, smack it with a hammer a couple times, and it's one piece. You can get started blacksmithing by reaching out through Facebook or Instagram to any of the local chapters around. There is Abana that runs through 7 states, I believe. There is Fiddler's Grove Blacksmith Association in Lebanon, Tennessee. I'm working on revitalizing our blacksmith chapter here in Putnam County here soon. That's my big project for the next 5 years, is to get a location and get something going. But I mean, all you got to do is just reach out to the right channels and ask, and everybody knows a blacksmith, whether they know it or not. We're everywhere.